Welcome to the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast. You guys are in for a great podcast today with a man who shot two 200-inch whitetail in 10 days. I hope you enjoy.
All right, podcast guys. Listen, tonight on the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast, we have Larry Wheeler from Oklahoma, who not only shot one 200-inch deer this year, but two. And we're going to talk about the process of how this happened, a little bit of history on the deer that he has, and a little bit of the story of the hunt. And Larry was just talking to me about how in the beginning of October of 2017, he was hunting when a large bachelor group of bucks approached his stand. How many bucks were there, Larry?
6 altogether.
Were they all about the same size, or were there some smaller than others? Or
there were some smaller, but most of them went from about a 13 point up in large bodies. That's the first time I've seen deer this size around this part.
And did you have a previous history of these deer?
I had some on camera the previous year, 3 of them that showed up this year. But I've got pictures of those from 2016, but this year they was even bigger. But those other ones, when the neighbor told me that they was tearing up pecan trees, I went and set up 8 cameras in that pecan grove, and I was not prepared for the pictures that came off them cameras. The size of the one was unreal.
I bet. I mean, how did you feel when you checked your camera and you saw a 200-inch deer on there?
Well, see, I'd never seen a 200-inch deer before, so I really didn't know exactly the size
how big they
of
were,
the deer or how to compare them to nothing. So
you just knew they were giants.
I just knew they was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. So in looking at some of the rubs on those trees was, rubbed 4 foot up the tree, and the limbs that 5 foot up was stripped off the trees, and some of them, inch diameter was twisted off about a foot off the ground. So I knew it was big deer tearing those trees up.
Yeah, for sure. So can you tell me a little bit about the stand that you were hunting in that day? Like, where was it set up? Was it set up on the pecan orchard, or?
Well, I had the pecan grove. The trees are pretty small. Most of them is not, 4 or 5 inch diameter, so there's nothing to put a stand in. So I had a tripod stand, one sitting on the river bank, and then I've got another one that I have where I can move around, where those deer would come in various places off the river. There's a 2-mile riverfront on this piece of property, 640 acres. And they just randomly would come up just wherever. So I tried to set that tripod stand up somewhere underneath a big tree and hope they'd come around. Well, they'd mill around till dark, and I'd leave. And I'd done this 3 or 4 days, and I watched them come up by by my other stand 2 days in a row, and I thought, man, I got this. They're not 40 yards. Went down there and sat in that stand. No, they're 200 yards further down now. So I thought, well, I'm going to try putting out some corn and rice bran, something. Maybe they'll come and eat it, and I get them within range. Well, those big bucks wouldn't come to it. But I got some does, and a little 3-point and a 4-point would come to it and eat. Well, that eventually brought them in. So the particular morning of the evening of the 8th, I was sitting in that stand on a creek bank. That's the only thing close enough to that field, And anyway, I had a 13-point and a 14-point came up, and they was working their way to me. And they got about 70 yards, and I was getting psyched, pumped up. I know I'm going to get me a nice buck. And the next thing I know, I seen something underneath me to the right, and it was that 25-point, 206-inch deer. Like scared me dead. I ain't never seen nothing that big before. Man, when I shot that thing, it run, and it quickly disappeared. That grass and stuff in that pecan grove hasn't been brush hogged yet, and it's pretty high, so it didn't take him long to get, where I couldn't find him.
And at that point, you were pumped. Your heart was beating, and you just shot the biggest deer you ever seen.
Yeah. I had 2 coming to me. I ain't never seen that big. I just was never expecting one to walk under me, and I never heard him come up. I don't know where he crossed the fence at or nothing. Just
snuck up on you.
He's 15, 20 yards when he got in front of me, but he had his ears laid back and that old head was tilted back, and I mean, he was just in a fast walk to cut them two off. And so, man, the only thing I knew to do was to shoot him as quick as I could before he was, bolted and run at him. But man, it was just a shock to see a deer that big, that close.
Now, did you harvest him with a compound bow or a crossbow?
A crossbow.
Crossbow. What brand was that crossbow?
Parker.
What broadheads were you using on that day?
Using the Spitfire 100 grain.
Now, after you shot the buck, about how long did you wait before you picked up the trail?
I waited an hour before I got down out of the tree, and I got down and looked, and I couldn't find a sign of that deer nowhere. No hair, no blood. And I went back, but you could tell by the tracks, way he embedded them in the ground, he's bound to be hit, but I couldn't tell exactly where that arrow hit him at. But it took me 2 days to find that deer. He went over 500 yards. That was the most aggravating thing I ever had in my life, to shoot a deer, biggest thing you ever seen, and then can't find him.
I bet you were sick. I bet you couldn't sleep. You just wanted to find him.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep. The deer was still out there that after dark, and I didn't want to push the rest of the deer out in case if I didn't get a good hit on him. I didn't want to run everything else out. So, I didn't look a whole lot that night. Went back the next day and looked up and down the creek, and, grass is head high in a lot of places, so you couldn't, you could walk 2 or 3 foot from him, probably wouldn't see him. And I looked and never could find a sign of him. I looked all day that day, and I got a neighbor, and we took the 4-wheelers the next day, and we rode all day. And late that evening, we seen a skunk, and I thought, well, neighbor likes to get the skunks off the property, and I thought, well, we'll get that skunk. And that thing turned and went right by that deer, so we'd have never found him.
Man, that's crazy. So the skunk kind of led you to him.
Led us to it. If it hadn't been for that, I don't believe we'd ever found that deer.
So what was your first thought when you walked up on him? Oh, 2 fences.
Crossed 2 fences. I would have never thought he would have traveled. If he'd have crossed the fence he was at, he would have been back on the river, and we never would have found him. Man, it was just a breathtaking deal to walk up on that deer. To see the thickness and the mass of those horns, I've never seen anything like it.
Where did you end up shooting the deer with your crossbow?
It looked like it went just in the top part of maybe the left shoulder blade, and so I think I just got one lung is what it looked like it happened. And I think that's why he got to travel so far, and the arrow didn't go through him, so he didn't bleed out onto the ground none. Looked like I'd hit him in the top part of maybe the left shoulder blade, and it just, I think it probably got the right lung and probably stuck in part of didn't go through the chest cavity on the right side.
So after harvesting a 25-point deer and finding him 2 days later, what were you thinking when you started hunting the next day? Or was it the next day, or did you wait until the 16th to go back out?
The next day, my wife's grandfather had passed away, so we spent from Wednesday to Sunday with funeral services, and also I didn't get to hunt again until the evening of the 16th. So when I got back down there, before I got down there, I got to thinking about how that deer reacted when he seen those other 2 coming. So I loaded up a decoy and hauled a decoy down with me. They had brush hogged that entire property, getting ready to harvest pecans. And in the years past, that's always moved the deer off because there's no cover.
Yeah.
In this case, they didn't. They stayed. Those deer come out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I could not believe it because of all the years I've been hunting there since '87, I believe. And every time they brush hog it, the deer's gone because there's no cover. But they didn't leave this time. That clover underneath those pecan trees was real thick, and I think that's what held them.
Yeah, in the early season, they like to get on that green
the green clovers and everything.
Yeah. And 4 does came off that river and came up, and they jumped that fence in that little pecan grove where I was at. And those 3 bucks could not get their eyes off that decoy. Couldn't stand it. And about the 3rd time they raised their head up and looked at it, I mean, here they come to it. But I set that decoy out in front of me at 15 yards, and that's where I messed up at, because they would do a kind of a half moon around it just out of range. So I know in the future, when we'll set a decoy up, to set it off to the opposite side of which I think they're going to come to, or come from, then they'll come in front of you. But I set it in front of me because I didn't know. I'd seen all them videos of them packing that decoy, and I thought, man, it's going to happen. But it took them about 15 minutes walking back and forth, just out of range, before one of them started to come to it. When he started into it, that 34-point one just cut him off, and I mean made a beeline to him and got within 30 yards. So I let him have it. And fell right there. I didn't have to chase him, look for him. But I did buy Luminox. I'll never hunt again without Luminox. So you can see for sure where that arrow goes and where it hits.
Yeah. Did you end up finding your... Made it believe you're out of you? Man, I love the Luminox. I actually use the Nocturnals. Still a lighted Noc, but I think they're awesome. And you're right. I'll never hunt without them again.
I won't either. Losing that 25-point one broke me. I won't never shoot another one without it.
And did you end up recovering your bolt from the first deer that you shot, the 25-point?
Never could find it.
So the second one, and you said how many points was the second one?
The second was 34 points.
34
and it
points.
dragged out 165 points, 165 pounds.
And that's a big deer for Oklahoma, man. Especially that part.
Deer. The 25-point one had a 22-inch neck at the base of the head, and the 34-pointer had a 24-inch neck at the base of the head.
That's crazy.
And the guys that done taxidermy looked at them, and a lot of them, they didn't have much front teeth. Their jaw teeth is below the gum line, and they kind of figured they're about 8 years old. Yeah, I killed one 3 years ago. That's an 18-point that George Moore scored it yesterday, and it scored 167. That's the biggest thing I've killed in the past. But when I hung that 25-point up next to it, it looked like a midget. I mean, unreal.
Like a little baby.
Unbelievable. I never even knew Oklahoma had deer like that, and I think he has measured 28 of them now that's 180 inches or above in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's what he was posting on Facebook the other day. I saw he said that it was over 20 deer that were over 200 inches this year in Oklahoma, and that's crazy.
I never heard of it before. I've seen several Pontotoc County and some from Seminole that went 200 inches. So I don't know if they're running up and down that river or where some of these are coming from for sure.
It's just, I'm going to assume, lay it down to it's just a good quality area, lots of minerals in the ground and good food for them to eat. And a lot of that area is pretty rural too. So, there's a lot of area for those deer to run around in.
And see, in the years past, the rivers have been so low. There's been so much four-wheeler traffic up and down there, the four-wheeler people going in hunting and stuff. And so it kind of messes the deer up where I hunt at a lot because, there's, like I say, they're going down there in the mornings hunting back and forth. So this year the river was up and they couldn't travel up and down it. And I think that's what really helped me.
Yeah, especially the pressure going up and down the river probably definitely pushes all the deer out of that area. And then this year, we got a lot of rain this year, so all the rivers stayed pretty high.
But, black powder season, I took my wife down there and set her up in the ground blind, and she killed a really nice 14-point in the same spot, which I would have thought for sure they'd been gone out by then. I would have not ever thought the deer would have stayed, especially after getting two. That's most time them dudes are gone, you don't never see them again.
Yeah, you shoot one of them in the area, then they kind of, a lot of times they'll all get out of there for a little while.
Yeah, the only ones that I've ever seen stay is those little bucks. that's local. They don't never leave that property. But those big ones that just come through and hang out a while and breed those does, they'll move on out. They won't stay.
I remember seeing on Facebook where, I remember first seeing it in October when pictures started coming out about, how you'd shot 200-inch deer in out of the same tree within a week of each other. And I was just like, man, that is crazy, man. And then I recently started this podcast, and I was like, I would really like to have that guy on just to hear the story of those two deer and see what happened and the situation, because there's a lot of people in Oklahoma that are into the deer management, and they know every deer and they have names for them, and that's a good way to hunt too. But to hear a story like yours where you just kind of set up on them, your woodsmanship and everything, you went out there and you kind of just set up, and it happened to play into your hands. And man, congratulations is all I have to say. Man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
See, about 5 years ago, I quit planting weed and putting up corn feeder stuff down there because the landowner thought that was drawing in all the hogs. So he didn't want me to put nothing up and plant nothing, so I quit. Well, the hogs never quit coming.
Yeah.
So I talked to him. I said, I'd like to go ahead and put some stuff out because I couldn't get the deer to come. They just roam around that big, wide open space out there, and I never could get them close enough to me to shoot one of them. But once I put down them does and them two little old 3 and 4 point bucks coming over there, well, they released them by there, so that eventually allowed me to get one of them. But that second one, when I got back to hunting, and it was brush hogged off, I just knew it was done. But the only reason I went in and sat in that tree because I was already there.
Just a crazy story, man, and I'm glad that you stayed in that stand that day to end up shooting that 34 point.
I am too. I've had people, can't believe that it's not a high fenced area and be able to get 2 deer, but man, ain't nothing but a 5-wire barbed wire fence, and that's it. 640 acres is what this property is, and I'm the only one that hunts it, and I try to take care of it, fix the fences and cut the trees out of them and whatever needs the landowner doesn't have to go do it, and I think it just allows me a good opportunity to be able to hunt it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that a lot of people these days will ruin for other people is, people get permission on land and they'll tear it up, or they won't take care of things. They won't close gates. And, and that leads to a lot of people being very hesitant to giving people permission. But,
I don't go on it when the property's wet. I don't drive across it because I don't want to leave a sign of me being on the property.
Yeah, just leave it like it was or better.
That's it. I try to make it better every time I leave. But no acorns and stuff this year, it made it tough to hunt anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It
sure did.
And it was so dry that all of that green grass and that clover stuff dried up and died off, by November. Man, it was tough after 1st November to see a deer anywhere. And I hunt with Willie White. He's the preacher of the First Wheel Baptist Church here in Francis. I take him hunting, and we had a time, trying to find him a deer because they just wouldn't come to the feeders. I don't know where these deer was going, but they just wouldn't come to these corn feeders, and I don't understand them. I thought it dried up, they would pay off big time. They didn't this year, so.
There was a big mass crop. There was lots of acorns this year up here. We really used a bunch of pinch points and finding spots where when somebody comes in and accesses the land from the other side, maybe I have to, wade across a creek or whatever I have to do to get in a spot where no one else wants to go.
And this year was just unreal.
Those 2 deer are unreal. Are you going to hang them up in your living room or?
They're in the living room. My wife thinks they need to be somewhere else. Since that happened, I've been able to put a master bathroom on the house and stuff. Since my wife says I had plenty of time, I didn't need to hunt no more. But they're going to be in the backwoods hunting and fishing show the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of March.
And that's going to be in Oklahoma
Hopefully
City,
a lot
correct?
of people will come out and enjoy the show. So
I think they will. And maybe I'll make my way out there. Are you going to be there for the show?
I will be there. So people, it's hard for a lot of them to understand it's not a high fence area. And I've had them call the game ranger to verify there's no high fence area here. They've called the sheriff's department, and they've told me, hey, we've got people calling wanting to know about the high fence. And they tell them Pontotoc County doesn't have a high fence hunting area in it at all.
Has anyone else contacted you about doing interviews about the story or anything?
I've had a couple more, and they just did a written thing, but I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a link to a couple of them, so. But I've got some magazines wanting to do stories, so.
I figured for sure the magazines would be after you, trying to get your information.
I think the Northern Whitetail, and they said they don't typically do stories here, but they wanted to do one on account of this one.
Because I don't think this has ever been done before. I don't think one person's ever shot 2 deer that size out of the same stand within 10 days of each other. I don't think it's ever been done before. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me and tell me the story. I mean, it's an amazing story, and I want to thank you for your service. You said it was 36 years?
36 years in there, and had 2 back surgeries. That's the only reason I can't shoot a compound bow. 2 back shoulder surgeries and a shoulder surgery, so I can't draw that bow and hold it now.
Man, what a great story and a great podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it just as much as I did tonight on the Devoted Outdoorsman's podcast. If you guys are loving the content, if you're liking the podcast, if you're hating the podcast, or if you just want to say what's up, you can hit me up on Facebook at the Devoted Outdoorsman, or check out my YouTube page, the Devoted Outdoorsman. Please, like always, check out the iTunes, subscribe, and rate this podcast. It will help me out and help me keep delivering great content to you guys.